7-year-old Sofia Garcia clutched her tattered notebook to her chest as laughter echoed through the hallways of Westbrook Elementary, the word trash following her like a shadow she couldn't escape. Her threadbare clothes and scuffed shoes, the best her grandmother could provide from their home in the rundown apartment complex the other children called the dumps, made her an easy target for the wealthy students whose parents ran the town. Ms. Peterson watched from her classroom doorway as Sofia walked with her eyes fixed on the floor, her small shoulders curved inward as if trying to disappear. The veteran teacher had seen many struggling students in her 30 years of teaching, but something about this quiet girl with intelligent eyes that seemed too old for her young face had captured her attention from the first day. What no one at Westbrook Elementary realized was that behind Sofia's silence lay a gift so extraordinary it would soon leave them all speechless. Before we continue this heartbreaking journey of a child facing cruel prejudice, please subscribe to our channel for more stories about remarkable individuals who overcome impossible odds through courage and determination. Every day at exactly 12:15, Sofia slipped away from the cafeteria with its noisy chatter and judgmental stares. The third stall in the girls' bathroom became her sanctuary, a place where she could eat her simple lunch, usually a squashed peanut butter sandwich, in peace. Today was no different as she sat on the closed toilet lid, back pressed against the cold metal partition, knees drawn up to support her precious notebook. No one at Westbrook Elementary knew that Sofia had been keeping this notebook since she was 5. Her mother had given it to her, a simple composition book with a black and white speckled cover, now worn soft at the edges from constant handling. For all the beautiful stories inside you, her mother had whispered, tucking Sofia's hair behind her ear. That was before the cancer took her, before Sofia and Abuela had to move to the Sunrise Valley apartments, the dumps, where the rent was just barely manageable on her grandmother's cleaning lady wages. Sofia uncapped her chewed-up pen and continued the story she'd been working on about a girl who could talk to birds and learned all the secrets of the town. In Sofia's story, the birds told the girl where to find lost treasures, enough that she and her grandmother could move to a castle with warm rooms and always enough food. The lunch bell rang, startling Sofia from her writing. She quickly closed her notebook, tucking it inside her frayed backpack, before making her way to Mrs. Peterson's classroom. She kept her eyes down, expertly navigating the hallway to avoid any collisions with the other students. Over the months, she had perfected the art of invisibility, or so she thought. "Watch where you're going, dump girl," Amber Foster said, deliberately stepping into Sofia's path. Amber, with her perfect blonde ponytail and designer clothes, was everything Sofia was not. "What's that smell?" "Oh, it's just trash." The girls surrounding Amber giggled, their laughter sharp as glass. Sofia kept her head down, trying to step around them. "What's in the bag? More garbage?" Amber reached for Sofia's backpack, but before she could grab it, a voice cut through the hallway. "Amber, I believe you're needed in the principal's office. Something about your math test." Ms. Peterson stood in her classroom doorway, arms crossed. "The rest of you should find your seats before the bell rings." Amber's face flushed, but she retreated with her friends, shooting Sofia a look that promised this wasn't over. Mrs. Peterson's classroom was Sofia's favorite place at Westbrook. Unlike the sterile, aggressive brightness of the rest of the school, Mrs. Peterson had transformed room 118 into something almost magical. Bookshelves lined the walls, plants thrived on the windowsills, and student artwork brightened every available space. It smelled of books and the cinnamon potpourri Mrs. Peterson kept on her desk. Sofia slipped into her seat at the back corner, closest to the bookshelf, but furthest from the other students. As always, she took out her supplies with careful precision, her pencil with the eraser nearly gone, her single folder with a tear down the middle, and her school-issued textbook that she handled with reverence. "Good afternoon, everyone," Ms. Peterson said, once the final bell rang. I have an exciting announcement today. Our district is holding its annual creative writing competition, and our class will be participating. An audible groan rose from several of the students, but Sophia's heart suddenly beat faster. Her hand instinctively moved to her backpack where her notebook lay hidden. This year's theme is "The World Through My Eyes," Ms. Peterson continued, writing on the board in her elegant handwriting. You'll each write an original story or essay expressing how you see the world around you. The best entry from our class will be submitted to the district competition, where it could win a scholarship prize and publication in the district literary journal. "Do we have to do this?" complained Tyler Matthews, the son of Westbrook's mayor. "I'm already signed up for baseball and coding club." "Yes, Tyler, this is a required assignment for everyone," Ms. Peterson replied, "and I think you might surprise yourself if you give it a chance." Her eyes swept the classroom, lingering momentarily on Sophia. "Sometimes the most powerful voices are the ones we haven't heard yet." Sophia ducked her head, feeling a flush creep up her neck. Surely Ms. Peterson couldn't mean her. No one ever heard Sophia's voice. She spoke only when directly addressed by a teacher, and even then in whispers, barely audible across the classroom. "Each of you will have 3 weeks to complete your story," Ms. Peterson explained, passing out instruction sheets. "Minimum 5 pages, maximum 15. I'll be available during lunch and after school if anyone needs extra help." When the paper reached Sophia, she stared at it with a mixture of excitement and terror. A real writing assignment with the possibility of others reading her words. It was both her deepest desire and greatest fear. "This is so stupid," Amber whispered to her friend Madison, loud enough for Sophia to hear. "Who cares about some dumb writing contest?" Sophia cared. She cared more than she could express. Words had been her only friends since her mother died, her only escape from the cold apartment with its leaking ceiling and the constant worry she saw in Abuela's tired eyes. Every night after her mother's funeral, Sophia had lain awake listening to the strange noises of their new apartment, the arguments through paper-thin walls, the dripping pipes, the occasional sirens. Her mother had always made up stories to explain scary sounds. The groaning pipes were actually sleeping dragons. The howling wind was just the night asking the trees to dance. So Sophia began writing her own explanations in her notebook, creating worlds where frightening things became magical instead. When the final bell rang, Sophia carefully placed the assignment sheet in her folder. Unlike the other students who rushed for the door, she took her time, waiting until the classroom had mostly emptied. "Sophia," Ms. Peterson called gently as she was about to leave. "Could I speak with you for a moment?" Sophia approached the desk. Cautiously, her eyes fixed on the pattern of the carpet. "I wanted to check if you had any questions about the writing assignment," Mrs. Peterson said. "I think you might really enjoy this project." Sophia shook her head slightly, still not looking up. Ms. Peterson studied the quiet girl for a moment. "You know, when I was about your age, I lived in a place not so different from Sunrise Valley. My mother worked 2 jobs, and I often felt out of place at school." Sophia's eyes lifted briefly, surprise flitting across her face. "What helped me was writing," Ms. Peterson continued, "putting my thoughts on paper when I couldn't say them out loud." She opened her desk drawer and pulled out a fresh notebook with a purple cover. "I thought you might like this for your project." Sophia stared at the notebook, its cover unmarked, its pages crisp and waiting. Something stirred inside her, a feeling so foreign she almost didn't recognize it. Hope. With trembling fingers, she reached for the gift, cradling it like something precious. "Thank you," she whispered, the words barely audible. Mrs. Peterson smiled. "I look forward to reading your story. Sophia, I have a feeling you have a lot to say." That evening, in the small apartment she shared with her grandmother, Sophia sat at the wobbly kitchen table, her new purple notebook open before her. Abuela moved around the tiny kitchen, preparing a simple dinner of beans and rice. Occasionally, glancing at her granddaughter with concern. "¿Cómo fue la escuela hoy, mija?" she asked, her voice weary from a long day, cleaning other people's homes. "Fine," Sophia answered softly in English. She rarely spoke Spanish anymore. It reminded her too much of evenings with her mother, cooking together and singing old songs from Puerto Rico. Those memories hurt too much to revisit. "You are writing?" Abuela asked, her English heavily accented, but clear. Sophia nodded, not looking up from the blank page that both invited and intimidated her. How could she explain to Abuela that Mrs. Peterson thought she might have something worth saying? That for the first time since Mama died, someone had looked at Sophia and seen more than just a poor girl in shabby clothes. "Your mama she loved." The words, Abuela said, setting a plate of food beside Sophia's notebook. She would tell stories that made even the birds stop to listen. Sophia felt tears prick behind her eyes. It was true. Her mother had been magic with words, weaving tales about princesses and adventures and faraway lands. Before she got sick, they would sit together every night, her mother's voice painting worlds so vivid Sophia could almost touch them. "Eat now," Abuela said gently. "Words can wait until your stomach is full." That night, after Abuela had fallen asleep in the room they shared, Sophia pulled out her flashlight and opened the purple notebook. At the top of the first page, she carefully wrote, "The Girl Who Could Talk to Birds." Below it, she added, "By Sofia Garcia." For the first time in a very long time, Sophia fell asleep with a smile on her face, the notebook tucked safely under her pillow, full of possibilities waiting to be born. Over the next week, Sophia poured herself into her story, writing during every spare moment. At lunch in her bathroom sanctuary, after finishing her chores at home, by flashlight when the electricity was temporarily cut off because Abuela's paycheck wouldn't come until Friday. The purple notebook became her constant companion, its pages filling with the tale of Mariposa, a girl who discovered she could understand the language of birds after her mother became a star in the sky. In Sophia's story, Mariposa learned that birds carried messages between earth and heaven. They told her secrets about everyone in town, who was kind but pretended to be cruel, who was cruel but pretended to be kind, and where a magical treasure was hidden that could heal her grandmother's tired hands and broken heart. When Monday arrived, Sophia brought her half-completed story to school, unable to bear parting with it, even for a few hours. During morning lessons, she occasionally opened her desk just enough to peek at the purple notebook, reassuring herself it was still there, still real. The feeling of creating something beautiful from nothing but her imagination was so precious it almost hurt. "All right, everyone, time for recess," Ms. Peterson announced after their math lesson. "Don't forget to bring your jackets. It's chilly today." Sophia was always the last to leave the classroom, carefully avoiding the initial rush of students. As she stepped into the hallway, clutching her notebook along with her thin sweater, she had no proper jacket. She didn't notice Amber Foster watching her with narrowed eyes. The playground at Westbrook Elementary was state-of-the-art, with colorful climbing structures, a rubberized track, and even a small amphitheater for outdoor lessons. Sophia's usual spot was a bench partially hidden behind the equipment shed, where she could write undisturbed while the other children played. She had just settled into her spot, opening her notebook to continue Mariposa's adventure, when a shadow fell across the page. "What are you always writing in that stupid book?" Amber stood before her, Madison and two other girls flanking her like sentries. Sophia quickly closed the notebook, clutching it to her chest. "Nothing," she whispered, eyes downcast. "Doesn't look like nothing," Amber said, reaching for the notebook. "Let me see?" Sophia shook her head, gripping the notebook tighter. "Give it," Amber demanded, her voice hardening. "Or we'll tell everyone you were stealing from the lost and found again." Sophia's head jerked up in shock. She had never stolen anything. The accusation last month about a missing lunchbox had been a complete lie. But several students had believed it anyway. In that moment of surprise, her grip loosened just enough for Amber to snatch the purple notebook from her hands. "Give it back," Sophia pleaded, her voice stronger than usual in her panic. "Please, it's mine." Amber danced backward, flipping through the pages with exaggerated curiosity. The girl who could talk to birds, she read aloud, her tone mockingly theatrical. By Sofia Garcia. Oh my God, Dump Girl thinks she's a writer. The other girls giggled as Amber continued to flip through the pages. Mariposa waked up and knew she was special, Amber read, emphasizing Sofia's spelling errors. The birds told her secrets that nobody else could hear. She looked up with a cruel smile. Wow, you can't even spell special or told correctly, and you don't know the difference between here and here. Tears burned behind Sofia's eyes, but she blinked them back furiously. Showing weakness would only make things worse. Give it back, she repeated, standing up with her fists clenched. At her sides, Madison, listen to this part, Amber continued, ignoring Sofia. The mean girls at school didn't know that Mariposa could hear what the birds said about them. The birds told her that the girls were just jealous because they didn't have magic in their hearts. Madison shrieked with laughter. Jealous? Magic? There! Oh my God, that's pathetic. By now, other children had gathered around, drawn by the commotion. Sofia stood frozen, humiliation burning through her body as Amber continued to read more passages aloud, each one punctuated by laughter and mocking comments. She thinks birds talk to dead people, someone shouted. What a freak. Trash Girl can't even spell. Amber held the notebook high, turning in a circle so everyone could see. This is what dump people think is good writing. This is why they live where they do. Sofia lunged forward, jumping to try to grab her notebook, but Amber easily held it out of reach. In desperation, Sofia pushed Amber harder than she intended, causing the taller girl to stumble backward. Amber's face darkened with rage. You pushed me! Did everyone see that? The trash girl just attacked me! With deliberate slowness, she walked to the edge of the playground where a large puddle had formed from the morning's rain. I think this garbage belongs in the water, don't you? No, Sofia cried, real fear in her voice now. Please, Amber, don't. With a flick of her wrist, Amber tossed the purple notebook into the middle of the puddle. It landed with a splash, immediately, soaking the pages that contained Sofia's heart and soul. Oops, Amber said with fake innocence. Looks like your trashy book found its home. The playground supervisor, who had finally noticed the commotion, hurried over. What's going on here? And nothing, Mrs. Miller, Amber said smoothly. Sofia dropped her notebook in a puddle and got upset. We were just trying to help. Sofia didn't hear the conversation that followed. She had rushed to the puddle and dropped to her knees, heedless of the mud soaking through her already worn jeans. With trembling hands, she pulled the notebook from the water, watching in horror as the ink ran in rivulets down the pages, turning her carefully crafted words into unrecognizable blue smears. Mariposa was drowning. The birds were silent. The magic was gone. Someone was speaking to her, but Sofia couldn't process the words. Everything sounded distant and muffled, as if she were underwater herself. She felt a hand on her shoulder and flinched away violently. Sofia. It was Mrs. Peterson's voice, somehow cutting through the fog. Sofia, come with me. Let's get you inside. Sofia allowed herself to be led away, still clutching the ruined notebook. Behind her, she could hear Amber's theatrical explanation. I don't know why she's so upset about some dumb notebook. It's not like it was any good anyway. In the quiet of the empty classroom, Ms. Peterson tried to help salvage what they could of the notebook, carefully separating pages and laying them on paper towels to dry. But it was hopeless. The ink had run too much. The paper was falling apart, and most of the story was simply gone. I'm so sorry this happened, Ms. Peterson said gently. Would you like to tell me what occurred out there? Sofia stared at the destroyed pages, something breaking inside her. Slowly, she shook her head. Sofia, I can't help if you don't tell me what happened. But Sofia couldn't speak. The words that had flowed so freely onto the page now seemed locked away inside her, buried under a mountain of shame and loss. She had dared to believe her words mattered, that her stories were worth telling. Amber's cruelty had exposed the truth. Children from the dumps didn't get to be writers. They didn't get to have magic. They didn't get to dream. "Would you like me to call your grandmother?" Mrs. Peterson asked. Sophia shook her head again. Abuela couldn't miss work. They needed every dollar she earned for the remainder of the day. Sophia sat silently at her desk, not participating, not writing. Barely present. When the final bell rang, she left without a word. The sodden remains of her notebook left behind on Mrs. Peterson's desk. That evening, Abuela knew immediately that something was terribly wrong. Sophia, always quiet, had become completely silent, responding to questions with only the slightest nod or shake of her head. "Mija, what has happened?" Abuela asked, kneeling before Sophia, despite the pain in her knees from years of scrubbing floors. "Are you sick? Did someone hurt you?" Sophia stared at her grandmother's concerned face. The deep lines around her mouth, the silver threading through her dark hair, the hands rough and red from cleaning chemicals. How could she explain what had happened? How could she tell Abuela that the notebook Ms. Peterson had given her, a luxury they could never have afforded themselves, was ruined? How could she admit that for a brief, foolish moment, she had believed she could be more than what the wealthy children of Westbrook said she was? Sophia simply shook her head and turned away, curling into herself on their worn sofa. Abuela made coffee for herself and hot chocolate for Sophia, setting both mugs on their small coffee table. "When your mother was sad," she said softly, "she would write her feelings in her journal. Perhaps you would like to write too." At the mention of writing, Sophia's eyes filled with tears that finally spilled over, running down her cheeks in silent streams. She pulled a cushion over her face to muffle the sobs that suddenly racked her small body. Alarmed, Abuela gathered Sophia into her arms, rocking her as she had when Sophia was a toddler. "Mi niña pequeña, my little one, what has broken your heart so badly?" But Sophia couldn't answer. The words were gone, locked away where Amber's cruelty couldn't reach them, where they couldn't be mocked or destroyed or thrown into puddles. She had learned her lesson. Silence was safety. Invisibility was protection. Dreams were dangerous. The address scribbled in Sophia's school registration file led Mrs. Peterson to Sunrise Valley Apartments, the dumps, as her students callously referred to it. Standing in the cracked parking lot, she surveyed the three-story building with its peeling paint, broken security door, and windows patched with duct tape. A child's bicycle, missing its chain, lay abandoned near an overflowing dumpster. Elaine Peterson had grown up in similar circumstances across town, before the neighborhood was gentrified and families like hers were forced to move. The familiar smells of cooking spices mingling with mildew and the distant thrum of too many lives packed too closely together brought back memories both difficult and tender. She checked the unit number again before climbing the external staircase to the third floor. A flickering hallway light illuminated graffiti-covered walls and a worn carpet stained with substances she preferred not to identify. Apartment 3C was at the end of the hall, distinguished by a small potted geranium struggling to bloom beside. "The door, Mrs.?" Peterson knocked gently, clutching her canvas bag filled with books, a new notebook, and a simple dinner she'd prepared, an offering she hoped wouldn't offend. The door opened a cautious few inches, secured by a chain. An older woman with tired eyes and silver-streaked hair peered out. "Mrs. Garcia? I'm Elaine Peterson, Sophia's teacher at Westbrook." Recognition and worry flashed across the woman's face. She closed the door briefly to unlatch the chain, then reopened it wider. "Please come in," she said in accented English. "Is Sophia in trouble?" "Not at all," Ms. Peterson assured her, stepping into the small apartment. "I'm concerned about her. She hasn't spoken at school for the past 3 days. I wanted to check on her." The apartment was tiny, but immaculately clean. Mismatched furniture had been arranged to maximize the limited space. A folding screen partially concealed what appeared to be a sleeping area, presumably where Sophia and her grandmother slept, as there was clearly only one bedroom. Despite the obvious poverty, there were touches of care everywhere. A hand-crocheted blanket on the sofa, a vase of wildflowers on the small dining table, photographs in dollar store frames. "Sophia is not speaking here either," Mrs. Garcia said, gesturing for Miss Peterson to sit. "Not since Monday. I am very worried." "Is she home now?" Miss Peterson asked, settling on the worn but clean sofa. Mrs. Garcia nodded toward the bathroom. Duck door. "She is taking shower. Our hot water is working today, so—" She shrugged, the gesture conveying both gratitude for small mercies and apology for their circumstances. Mrs. Garcia, "Please call me Carmen," she interrupted. "Carmen." Ms. Peterson smiled. "I'm Elaine. I believe something happened at school on Monday that deeply upset Sophia. A notebook she was writing in was destroyed by another student." Carmen's brow furrowed. "A notebook? She stopped speaking because of notebook?" "It wasn't just any notebook," Miss Peterson explained. "Sophia was writing a story, a beautiful, imaginative story. It meant a great deal to her." Understanding dawned in Carmen's eyes. "Like her mother," she said softly. "Maria was always writing stories. Even in hospital, she writes stories for Sophia." "I didn't know that," Miss Peterson said gently. "Maria was poet before she gets sick, published in small magazines, pride mixed with sorrow in Carmen's voice. She read to Sophia every night, make up stories when no books. After she died, Sophia start writing in little black notebook. The bathroom door opened and Sophia emerged wearing worn but clean pajamas, her wet hair combed back from her face. She froze when she saw Miss Peterson, her eyes widening in alarm. "Hello, Sophia," Ms. Peterson said warmly. "I hope it's okay that I came to visit." Sophia remained in the bathroom doorway, her posture tense with uncertainty. "I brought you something," Ms. Peterson continued, reaching into her bag. She pulled out a green notebook, thicker and sturdier than the purple one that had been destroyed. "I thought you might like a new place to write your stories." Sophia didn't move, her eyes fixed on the notebook with an expression of both longing and fear. "I also brought some books I thought you might enjoy," Ms. Peterson added, setting several paperbacks on the coffee table. "And a casserole if you and your grandmother are hungry." Carmen touched her heart in a gesture of gratitude. "You are very kind, teacher. Please, you will stay and eat with us?" Ms. Peterson smiled. "I'd like that very much if it's no trouble." As Carmen went to the kitchenette to heat the casserole, Sophia finally moved from the doorway, approaching the coffee table with cautious steps. She glanced at the books, a collection of stories by Sandra Cisneros, a well-worn copy of Island of the Blue Dolphins, and several others featuring young protagonists facing adversity. "I loved these books when I was your age," Ms. Peterson said quietly. "They helped me escape sometimes when things were difficult at home." Sophia looked up, a question in her eyes. "Yes, things were difficult for me too," Miss Peterson confirmed, correctly interpreting Sophia's look. "My father left when I was 6, and my mother cleaned houses, just like your grandmother. We moved a lot, wherever the rent was cheapest. I never had the right clothes or the right things, and some kids were very cruel about it." Sophia's gaze intensified, her attention completely focused on Mrs. Peterson now. "But I found that words have power," Ms. Peterson continued. "When I wrote stories, I could create worlds where things were different, where I was different. Writing gave me a voice when I felt voiceless." She gently pushed the green notebook toward Sophia. "What happened to your story was wrong, Sophia. Amber had no right to take your notebook or destroy it. She's been disciplined, but I know that doesn't fix what was broken." Sophia's eyes dropped to the notebook, her hands twisting in the hem of her pajama top. "The thing about stories, though," Miss Peterson said softly, "is that they live inside us. Paper can be destroyed, but the stories themselves, the magic, that can't be taken away unless we let it be." Carmen returned with plates of steaming food. "Time to eat now. Sophia, wash your hands, por favor." During dinner, Ms. Peterson and Carmen carried the conversation, talking about everyday things: the changing weather, Carmen's work cleaning houses for wealthy families, Mrs. Peterson's garden at home. Sophia ate silently, but Mrs. Peterson noticed her occasionally glancing at the green notebook still sitting on the coffee table. As they finished eating, Mrs. Peterson turned the conversation to the writing competition. The deadline has been extended by a week, she told Sophia. There's still time to submit an entry if you're interested. Carmen looked at her granddaughter hopefully. Your mama would be so proud to see you writing stories like she did. Sophia stared at her empty plate, her expression unreadable. Did you know the district winner receives a scholarship to the summer writing program at the community college? Ms. Peterson added. And their story gets published in the district literary journal. People all over town would read it. For the first time, a flicker of something, interest perhaps, or longing, showed in Sophia's eyes. After helping Carmen clear the dishes, Mrs. Peterson prepared to leave. Thank you for the lovely evening, she said, and for welcoming me into your home. Carmen clasped her hand warmly. Thank you for caring about my Sophia. Not many teachers would come here. At the door, Mrs. Peterson turned to Sophia, who had remained at the table. The green notebook is yours, whether you decide to write again or not, and my classroom is open during lunch if you ever want a quiet place to write, or just to sit. As Mrs. Peterson walked back to her car through the darkening parking lot, she worried she had overstepped, pushing too hard too soon. Perhaps Sophia needed more time, more space to process her trauma. Perhaps the wound was still too fresh for her to risk exposing her heart again. Back in apartment 3C, Sophia sat alone at the table while her grandmother took a much-needed shower. Her eyes kept returning to the green notebook, its cover the deep green of forest leaves, its pages thick and waiting. Slowly, she rose and approached it, running her fingers over the cover. She opened it to the first page, where Mrs. Peterson had written an inscription for Sophia. Your words matter. Your stories deserve to be told. Your voice deserves to be heard. Ms. P, something stirred in Sophia's chest, a feeling both familiar and frightening, the desire to create, to express, to release the words bottled up inside her. But fear accompanied it now, fear of mockery, of destruction, of loss. She carried the notebook to the window, looking out at the night sky, where stars struggled to be seen through the city's light pollution. Somewhere up there, Mama was watching. What would she say about Sophia's silence, about her fear? Stories are how we survive, her mother had told her once, during a long night at the hospital when pain kept her awake. When the world is cruel, we create better worlds on paper. When we are voiceless, our characters speak for us. Sophia opened the drawer of their small sideboard and removed a pen, not a chewed-up ballpoint this time, but a smooth gel pen that Ms. Peterson had tucked into the notebook's spiral binding. With trembling fingers, she wrote at the top of the first page, "The Girl Who Could Talk to Birds, new version by Sofia Garcia." It wasn't much, just a title, just a beginning. But as Sophia crawled into bed that night, the notebook securely under her pillow, she felt something she hadn't felt since the day at the puddle. Possibility. Principal Williams's reversal should have been a victory. But as the district competition approached, Sophia's anxiety only grew. A week after being reinstated as Westbrook's primary division winner, she was called to the counselor's office during art class nemesis. Bennett, the school counselor, greeted her with a warm smile. "Hello, Sophia. Please have a seat." Sophia perched on the edge of the chair, eyes fixed on the colorful rug beneath her feet. "I wanted to talk to you about the district competition next Friday," Ms. Bennett explained. "Do you know what happens at the ceremony?" Sophia shook her head slightly. "Well, all the school winners from across the district gather at the community center. There's a special dinner, and then each winner reads a portion of their story aloud before the final winners are announced." Sophia's head snapped up, eyes wide with alarm. "Ah," Mrs. Bennett said gently, "I thought that might be concerning for you, given that you haven't been speaking at school." Understatement of the century. Sophia's hands began to tremble at the mere thought of standing in front of strangers, reading her words aloud. The thing is, Sophia, participation in the reading portion is mandatory for all finalists. It's considered part of the competition. Ms. Bennett leaned forward slightly. But we have 2 weeks to prepare. I thought perhaps we could work together, just the two of us, to help you feel comfortable speaking again. Would that be okay? Sophia stared at her, panic rising like floodwater. She couldn't do it. She couldn't stand on a stage with everyone. Looking at her, judging her, waiting for her to fail, she shook her head vehemently. I understand it feels overwhelming right now, Ms. Bennett said. But I believe you can do this, Sophia. Your story deserves to be heard in your own voice. Tears welled in Sophia's eyes. She wanted to explain that it wasn't that simple, that the words were locked inside her chest behind a door she no longer knew how to open. But of course, she couldn't explain. That was the whole problem. Would it help to practice with Mrs. Peterson? First, just the two of you? After a long moment, Sophia gave a tiny nod. If she had to try with anyone, it would be Mrs. Peterson. Excellent. We'll start tomorrow during lunch, okay? Just reading a sentence or two at first. When Sophia returned to class, she couldn't focus on the lesson. All she could think about was the impossible task ahead, speaking again in public, reading the most personal thing she had ever written. By the time the final bell rang, she felt physically ill with anxiety. Sophia, Ms. Peterson called as the other students filed out. Could you stay for a moment? Once they were alone, Ms. Peterson sat in a student desk beside Sophia's. Ms. Bennett told me about the reading requirement. I know it seems frightening right now, but I want you to know something important. She waited until Sophia looked up. Fear doesn't mean you can't do something. It just means that thing matters to you. Sophia blinked, considering this perspective. Your story matters, Sophia. And yes, sharing it is scary because it's precious to you. But think about Mariposa. She was afraid too, wasn't she? Afraid of being different, afraid of what people would think if they knew she could talk to birds. But she found her courage. A flicker of something, recognition perhaps, crossed Sophia's face. We'll take it one tiny step at a time, Ms. Peterson. Promised. And whatever happens, I'm proud of you for writing your truth. That night, Sophia lay awake long after Abuela had fallen asleep. She thought about Mariposa, the character she had created who was really herself in disguise. In her story, Mariposa had been afraid at first, hiding her ability to understand birds. But gradually, she had discovered that her difference was actually a gift, a way to help others, a way to honor her mother's memory. What if, Sophia wondered, her own writing was like Mariposa's bird speaking? What if it was a gift, not something to hide? The next day at lunch, Sophia met Mrs. Peterson in the empty classroom as planned. The teacher had printed out a copy of The Girl Who Could Talk to Birds, with certain passages highlighted. These are some options for the reading portion, Ms. Peterson explained. You'd only need to read about 2 minutes worth, maybe a page at most. Which section do you like best? Sophia pointed to the middle of the story, where Mariposa first realizes she can understand what the birds are saying. That's a wonderful choice, Miss Peterson said. It's the turning point of the story. She pushed the pages gently toward Sophia. Would you like to try reading just the first sentence, just to me? Very quietly? Sophia stared at the printed words, her words. Her throat felt tight, her chest constricted. She opened her mouth, but no sound emerged. It's okay, Miss Peterson assured her. We have time. Let's try something else. What if I read it first, and then you just repeat after me, one word at a time? Slowly, haltingly, they worked through the first sentence. Mariposa woke up to the sound of birds singing outside her window. Ms. Peterson said each word, and Sophia whispered it after her, so quietly it was barely audible. It took nearly 10 minutes to get through that single sentence, but when they finished, Ms. Peterson beamed, as if Sophia had recited the entire story flawlessly. That was wonderful, Sophia. How did it feel? Sophia touched her throat in wonder. After weeks of silence, using her voice felt strange, like exercising a muscle that had atrophied. But it hadn't hurt. The sky hadn't fallen. No one had laughed. Over the next several days, they continued their lunchtime practice. Sophia gradually moved from repeating after Ms. Peterson to reading sentences on her own, though still in a whisper that sometimes faded to nothing mid-phrase. When this happened, Miss Peterson would simply wait patiently until Sophia found her voice again, never showing frustration or disappointment. By the day before the district competition, Sophia could read her selected passage in a voice that, while soft and sometimes tremulous, was audible to someone sitting beside her. It was progress, but the thought of reading aloud to a room full of strangers still filled her with dread. "You've come so far," Ms. Peterson encouraged her after their final practice. "Remember, everyone at the ceremony is there because they love stories. They want to hear yours." "What if I can't do it?" Sophia whispered, the first spontaneous question she had asked in weeks. Mrs. Peterson's eyes widened slightly at this breakthrough, but she kept her reaction measured. "If the words don't come tomorrow, we'll figure something out." "But Sophia, I believe they will come. Do you know why?" Sophia shook her head. "Because you have something important to say. And when we have something important to say, we find a way to say it. Through writing, through art, or sometimes through finding our voice again when we thought it was lost forever." Friday morning dawned clear and cool. Sophia stood in front of the bathroom mirror in apartment 3C, practicing her reading. In a whisper while Abuela prepared a special breakfast. "You want me to do your hair special today?" Carmen asked, coming to stand behind her granddaughter. "Like your mama used to?" Sophia nodded, unexpected tears pricking her eyes. Her mother had often braided her hair with colorful ribbons woven through the plaits. Since her death, Sophia had worn her hair simple and unadorned, as if beauty itself were a luxury they could no longer afford. As Carmen's fingers worked through her hair, Sophia closed her eyes and imagined her mother was there, preparing her for this important day. "Your words matter, Mariposa," she would have said. "Let them fly." "There," Carmen said finally, turning Sophia to face the mirror again. "Beautiful, just like your mama." Two neat braids framed Sophia's face, bright blue ribbons, the same color as the birds in her story, woven through them. For the first time in a very long time, Sophia recognized herself in the mirror, not just the sad, silent girl from the arm dumps, but Mariposa, a girl with magic inside her, with words that mattered, with a voice waiting to be heard. "Gracias, Abuela," she whispered. Carmen's eyes glistened. "De nada, mi Mariposa." The Westbrook Community Center stood imposingly in the heart of downtown, its modern glass and steel architecture a stark contrast to the modest brick buildings surrounding it. Sophia clutched Abuela's hand tightly as they approached the entrance, where a banner proclaimed 32nd Annual District Creative Writing Competition in bold letters. "Remember, Mija," Carmen whispered, "no matter what happens today, you already win by being brave enough to come." Mrs. Peterson was waiting for them in the lobby, her usual classroom attire replaced by an elegant blue dress. "Sophia, you look beautiful," she exclaimed, noticing the ribbons in her braids. "Are you ready for your big day?" Sophia managed a tiny nod, though in truth she felt anything but ready. Inside her chest, her heart fluttered like a captured bird. The primary division participants are gathering in the small conference room. Miss Peterson explained, leading them through the bustling lobby. Each school winner will meet their assigned mentor who will help them prepare for the reading. The conference room was already filled with children and adults when they arrived. Sophia immediately noticed the differences between herself and the other young competitors. Their clothes were newer, their shoes unscuffed, their parents more confident in this space. One girl was even wearing what appeared to be a custom-made dress with her name embroidered on the pocket. A woman with a clipboard approached them. "Sophia Garcia, Westbrook Elementary?" Sophia shrank back against Abuela's side, but Ms. Peterson answered for her. "Yes, this is Sophia. Wonderful. I'm Mrs. Sanchez, one of the competition coordinators. Sophia will be working with Mr. Ortiz, our community college creative writing instructor. She gestured toward a young man setting up chairs in the corner. He'll help her prepare for the reading portion. Mrs. Sanchez bent to Sophia's level. Your story about the bird-speaking girl is lovely, sweetheart. One of my favorites this year. Sophia's eyes widened in surprise. This stranger had read her words. And liked them? Mr. Ortiz greeted them warmly, his friendly demeanor immediately putting Sophia more at ease. So you're the author of The Girl Who Could Talk to Birds? I'm honored to meet you, Sophia. Your story reminded me of the magical realism writers I studied in college, Garcia Marquez, Isabel Allende. Sophia had no idea who those people were, but she liked the way Mr. Ortiz spoke to her, not with the condescending tone adults often used with children, but with genuine respect. I understand you're a bit nervous about the reading, he continued. That's completely normal. Even professional authors get stage fright. Shall we practice a bit before the ceremony? As Abuela and Miss Peterson settled into chairs nearby, Mr. Ortiz worked quietly with Sophia. He showed her breathing exercises to calm her nerves and explained how to pace her reading, where to pause for effect, how to make eye contact with the audience occasionally. The most important thing to remember, he told her, is that these words are yours. You created them. No one else in the world could read them exactly as you will because they came from your heart. Sophia nodded, clutching her copy of the story. With damp fingers. And if you get scared, he added with a conspiratorial smile, just imagine the audience are all birds, listening to Mariposa for the first time. Birds don't judge, do they? This unexpected suggestion brought a small smile to Sophia's face. No, birds wouldn't judge her accent or her clothes or where she lived. They would just listen to the story. As the time for the ceremony approached, the participants and their families were directed to the main hall, where round tables had been set up for a formal dinner. Sophia, Abuela, and Mrs. Peterson were seated, with Mr. Ortiz and representatives from the District Arts Committee. The table settings were intimidating, multiple forks and spoons that Sophia had only seen in movies, crystal water goblets that seemed too delicate for actual use. Just follow my lead, Miss Peterson whispered, noting Sophia's uncertainty. Or do what feels natural. There's no wrong way to enjoy a meal. During dinner, Sophia noticed a woman at a nearby table watching her with particular interest. She was elegantly dressed, with silver-streaked dark hair and intelligent eyes behind stylish glasses. When she caught Sophia looking, she smiled and gave a small wave. That's Renata Vega, Mr. Ortiz told Sophia quietly. She's one of the judges and also a published author. I think she's quite taken with your story. After dessert was served, the district superintendent approached the podium. Welcome, everyone, to our annual celebration of young writers. Tonight, we honor students whose creativity, imagination, and skill have set them apart as exceptional storytellers. Sophia's stomach tightened. Soon, very soon, she would have to walk to that podium and speak. Before we announce this year's winners, each of our school finalists will share a portion of their work. Let's begin with our primary division, grades 1 through 3. The first reader was a third-grade boy who had written about his family's camping trip. He strode confidently to the podium, his voice clear and practiced as he read his adventure story. Next came a girl in a frilly dress who had written an elaborate fairy tale. One by one, the primary division finalists shared their work, each seeming more poised than the last. And now, the superintendent announced, from Westbrook Elementary second grader Sophia Garcia, reading from The Girl Who Could Talk to Birds. The moment had arrived. Sophia felt frozen to her chair, panic rising in her throat. You can do this, mija, Abuela whispered, squeezing her hand. Mrs. Peterson nodded encouragingly. Remember Mariposa, Sophia. She was afraid too. Somehow, Sophia found herself standing, walking the seemingly endless distance to the podium. Someone had placed a step stool there so she could reach the microphone. The lights were bright, making it difficult to see the audience, just shadowy figures beyond the glare. Sophia placed her pages on the podium, her hands trembling visibly. The room fell silent, waiting. Seconds stretched into what felt like minutes as she stared at her own words, suddenly foreign and intimidating. "Take your time, sweetheart," the superintendent whispered from beside her. Sophia closed her eyes, remembering Mr. Ortiz's advice. Imagine they're birds, just birds, waiting to hear Mariposa's story. She took a deep breath and opened her eyes again. Mariposa woke up to the sound of birds singing outside her window, she began, her voice barely audible. Someone adjusted the microphone, bringing it closer to her mouth. But this morning, their songs sounded different. Instead of chirps and tweets, she heard words. Another breath, another sentence. Her voice grew slightly stronger. "Good morning, sad girl," said a blue jay perching on her windowsill. "Why don't you speak to the human children?" With each word, Sophia felt something shifting inside her. The lock on her voice beginning to loosen, the door to her silence creaking open. Her reading was far from perfect. She stumbled over a few words and her voice remained soft, but she continued, drawing strength from the story itself. Mariposa was shocked. "You can talk?" she whispered. The blue jay ruffled his feathers importantly. "We've always talked," he said. "You've just forgotten how to listen." As Sophia read about Mariposa's discovery of her gift, her own voice found its rhythm, gaining confidence with each sentence. When she reached the end of her selected passage, she looked up to find the audience leaning forward in their seats, fully engaged in her story. "Thank you," she whispered, stepping down from the podium. The applause that followed was thunderous. As Sophia made her way back to her table on shaky legs, she saw Abuela wiping tears from her eyes. Mrs. Peterson was beaming with pride. Even Renata Vega, the author judge, was applauding with particular enthusiasm. "You did it," Ms. Peterson whispered, as Sophia slid back into her seat. "You found your voice." And somehow Sophia knew that whatever happened next, whether she won an award or not, something profound had already been accomplished. She had spoken her truth aloud, and the world had listened. After the last student had read, the superintendent returned to the podium. "Thank you to all our wonderful young authors. While our judges confer to determine this year's winners, please enjoy coffee and refreshments in the lobby." Sophia remained at the table, emotionally exhausted from her reading, but also experiencing a strange, new feeling: pride. She had done something that had seemed impossible just days ago. She had spoken her words aloud, and people had listened. "You were magnificent," Ms. Peterson told her, genuine admiration in her voice. "The way you captured everyone's attention, that's a rare gift, Sophia." Before Sophia could respond, Renata Vega appeared beside their table. "Excuse me," she said politely. "I'm Renata Vega, one of the competition judges. I wanted to personally compliment Sophia on her story and her brave reading." Abuela stood quickly, smoothing her dress nervously. "Thank you, Senora. My granddaughter, she worked very hard." "It shows," Renata said warmly, focusing on Sophia. "Your story has something many adult writers struggle to achieve: authenticity. Mariposa feels real, her emotions genuine. And your use of birds as both characters and metaphors is quite sophisticated for your age." Sophia blushed, both pleased and overwhelmed by this praise from a real author. "May I ask what inspired your story?" Renata inquired gently. Sophia glanced at Mrs. Peterson, who nodded encouragingly. My mama," Sophia said softly. "She used to tell me bird stories before she became a star." Understanding dawned in Renata's eyes. "I see. So this was a way of honoring her memory. That's beautiful, Sophia." She hesitated, then added, "I lost my mother when I was young too. Writing helped me feel connected to her, just as it seems to help you." This unexpected connection with the elegant author made Sophia feel less alone. She nodded, a lump forming in her throat. "Well, I should return to the judges' table," Renata said, "but I wanted you to know that your story touched me deeply. Keep writing, Sofia. The world needs your voice." As Renata walked away, Abuela wiped a tear from her cheek. "Your mama sees this moment, mija. She is so proud." After what seemed an interminable wait, the audience was called back to their seats. The superintendent approached the podium once more, holding envelopes containing the results. In each division, we will announce our honorable mentions, then our third place, second place, and first place winners. Let's begin with our primary division, grades 1 through 3. Sofia held Abuela's hand tightly as the superintendent read the honorable mentions. 4 names, none of them hers. This could mean either that she hadn't placed at all, or that she was among the top 3 winners. Our third place winner receiving a certificate and a $50 gift card to Baker's Bookshop is Tyler Jameson from Oakwood Elementary for Space Pirates of Planet X. The boy who had read the science fiction story stood to enthusiastic applause, beaming as he accepted his prize. Our second place winner, receiving a certificate and a $100 scholarship to the District Summer Arts Program, is Miranda Chen from Lakeside Academy for My Grandmother's Quilt. The girl in the custom-made dress approached the podium, looking slightly disappointed not to have won first place. Sofia's heart pounded so loudly she was certain everyone at the table could hear it. Only first place remained. She told herself it was okay if she didn't win. She had already accomplished something important just by finding her voice again, but a small part of her dared to hope. And our first place winner in the primary division, receiving a certificate, a $250 scholarship to the District Summer Arts Program, and publication in the District Literary Journal, is... The superintendent paused for dramatic effect, smiling as she opened the final envelope. Sofia Garcia from Westbrook Elementary for The Girl Who Could Talk to Birds. For a moment, Sofia couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Had she heard correctly? First place? Her? Go on, mija, Abuela whispered, giving her a gentle nudge. They call your name. On trembling legs, Sofia made her way to the podium for the second time that evening. The superintendent shook her hand and presented her with a large certificate in a frame, announcing again into the microphone, "Congratulations, Sofia Garcia, our primary division champion." The applause was deafening. Through the blur of happy tears, Sofia saw Abuela and Mrs. Peterson on their feet, clapping and cheering. Mr. Ortiz gave her a thumbs up from his table. Even the other competitors seemed genuinely pleased for her, applauding with enthusiasm. As she turned to return to her seat, certificate clutched against her chest, Sofia caught sight of something unexpected. Principal Williams standing at the back of the room, his expression a complex mixture of surprise and something that might have been respect. The middle and high school division winners were announced next, but Sofia barely heard them. She was floating in a dream where impossible things happened, where a girl from the dumps could win first place, where her words could matter to strangers, where her voice could return after weeks of silence. After the ceremony concluded, well-wishers surrounded Sofia, congratulating her and asking about her story. An elderly woman who introduced herself as a retired librarian asked if Sofia would consider reading at their summer program. A reporter from the local newspaper requested a photo of Sofia with her certificate. Through it all, Sofia responded with soft-spoken thank yous, her voice growing slightly stronger with each interaction. It was as if winning had unlocked something within her. Not a flood of words, but a gentle stream that might, with time, grow more confident. As they prepared to leave, Renata Vega approached them once more. "Congratulations, Sofia. A well-deserved win." She handed Carmen a business card. "I run a writing workshop for young authors at the community college. Sofia would be welcome to join us this summer. Scholarship provided, of course." Carmen stared at the card in amazement. "Thank you. Señora, this is very generous." "Not at all. Talent should be nurtured," regardless of circumstances. Renata smiled at Sofia. Mariposa has more stories to tell, I think, and I'd like to help her tell them. On the bus ride home, Sofia sat between Abuela and Mrs. Peterson, her certificate carefully protected in a special folder the competition organizers had provided. She felt exhausted but wonderfully, gloriously alive, as if she had been half sleeping for weeks and had finally awakened. "I am so proud of you, mija," Carmen said, stroking Sofia's hair. "Your mama, she send you strength tonight." "I felt her," Sofia whispered, "when I was reading, like she was listening." Ms. Peterson smiled gently. "She was, Sofia. Through your words, through your story. You kept her memory alive in the most beautiful way possible." As the bus trundled through the darkened streets, Sofia looked out the window at the stars appearing in the evening sky. Somewhere up there was Mama's star, shining down on her. Had she heard Sofia's voice returning? Had she seen her daughter stand tall and speak her truth? Sofia liked to think so. And maybe, just maybe, Mama had sent the birds to help her find her way back to words, back to stories, back to herself. "Ms. Peterson," Sofia said quietly as they neared their stop. "Yes, Sofia, I think I'm ready to talk in class again." "Not a lot. But sometimes," Ms. Peterson's eyes glistened in the dim light of the bus. "We'll be ready to listen whenever you're ready to speak, Sofia. Your voice matters, always has, always will." As they stepped off the bus at Sunrise Valley, apartments, the dumps to some, but home to Sofia, she noticed something she'd never paid attention to before: the evening chorus of birds in the trees surrounding the complex. They sang to each other in the gathering darkness, their voices clear and unafraid. Sofia listened, really listened, and for the first time she understood what Mariposa had discovered in her story: that sometimes the most important voices are the ones most easily overlooked, and sometimes finding your own voice begins with learning to hear others. Sofia's return to Westbrook Elementary on Monday was nothing like she had expected. Word of her victory had spread throughout the school, transforming her overnight from the silent girl from the dumps to something of a celebrity. As she walked through the hallways, students who had never spoken to her before offered congratulations and smiles. "You were in the newspaper," exclaimed a fifth grader as Sofia passed. Indeed, the local paper had run a story about the district competition, featuring a photo of Sofia accepting her award. In Mrs. Peterson's classroom, an enlarged copy of the article was pinned to the bulletin board alongside Sofia's framed certificate. When Sofia entered, several classmates gathered around her desk, peppering her with questions about the ceremony. Was it scary to read in front of everyone? Did you get to meet real authors? What are you going to do with your scholarship? Money? Overwhelmed by the sudden attention, Sofia answered in whispers, her words still coming hesitantly after weeks of silence. But she did answer, each response a small victory over the fear that had held her voice captive for so long. Most surprising was the change in Amber Foster. The girl who had destroyed Sofia's original notebook now watched her from across the classroom with an expression that mixed resentment with reluctant admiration. During morning recess, Amber approached Sofia as she sat on her usual bench. "So, you actually won," Amber said, her tone carefully neutral. Sofia nodded, tensing slightly in anticipation of mockery, but Amber simply said, "My mom says your story is going to be published in the district journal. That's pretty cool, I guess." It wasn't exactly an apology, but coming from Amber, it was remarkable nonetheless. Sofia managed a quiet thank you before Amber walked away to rejoin her friends. That afternoon, Principal Williams called Sofia to his office. She entered cautiously, memories of the verification debacle still fresh in her mind. But the principal's demeanor had changed dramatically. Gone was the skepticism and condescension, replaced by an almost deferential politeness. "Miss Garcia," he began, indicating for her to take a seat, I wanted to personally congratulate you on your outstanding achievement. Your victory brings great honor to Westbrook Elementary." Sophia sat silently, hands folded in her lap, waiting. "I've been contacted by the superintendent's office," he continued. "They're quite impressed with your story and your performance at the competition. In fact, they've asked if you would be willing to read your work at the next school board meeting as an example of the excellent creative writing being produced in our district." Sophia's eyes widened in surprise. "Another public reading? So soon?" Noticing her expression, Principal Williams added quickly, "Of course, you would have plenty of time to prepare. Mrs. Peterson could help you practice, and both your grandmother and your teacher would be invited to attend." After a moment's consideration, Sophia nodded. The idea of reading aloud again was still intimidating, but no longer paralyzing. She had done it once. She could do it again. Excellent. Principal Williams seemed genuinely pleased. "There's one other matter. The district has a special program for talented young writers, a mentorship opportunity with professional authors, and access to advanced educational resources. Given your exceptional abilities, I'd like to nominate you for participation next year." This unexpected offer left Sophia momentarily speechless. Just weeks ago, this same principal had questioned whether she had even written her own story. Now, he was nominating her for a special program. Finding her voice, Sophia asked softly, "What about the other students, the ones who write good stories too?" Principal Williams looked startled by the question. "Well, there are limited spots available, and based on your competition victory, you've demonstrated the highest level of achievement." Sophia thought about Tyler, who had written a funny story about his dog learning to skateboard, and Madison, whose poem about the ocean had made Mrs. Peterson cry. They deserved opportunities too. Maybe, she began hesitantly, maybe we could have a writing club. For everyone who likes stories, the principal considered this suggestion with surprise. "That's actually a very thoughtful idea, Miss Garcia. I'll discuss it with Ms. Peterson." As Sophia left the office, she felt a strange new sensation, a sense of being heard, not just as a voice reading words on a page, but as a person with ideas that mattered. The following week brought more changes. The district literary journal containing Sophia's published story arrived, with "The Girl Who Could Talk to Birds" featured prominently. Ms. Jimenez, the librarian who had helped Sophia research birds, invited her to give a special reading at the public library's Saturday Story Hour. And most significantly, a letter arrived from Bridgewater Academy, one of the most prestigious private schools in the district. "They're offering you a scholarship?" Carmen asked in disbelief, reading the formal letter at their kitchen table. "Full tuition," Ms. Peterson, who had brought the letter personally after it was delivered to the school, explained. "Renata Vega sits on Bridgewater's Board of Trustees. She was extraordinarily impressed with Sophia's talent and recommended her for their arts specialty program." Carmen looked overwhelmed, her weathered hands trembling slightly as she held the expensive stationery. "But Bridgewater, it's for rich children. Sophia would be so different there." "She would," Mrs. Peterson acknowledged honestly. "But Bridgewater is also one of the best schools in the state, with resources Westbrook simply can't offer. Their writing program is exceptional." Sophia listened to the adults discussing her future, emotions swirling inside her. Bridgewater Academy represented opportunity, the kind her mother had always wanted for her. But it also meant leaving behind Ms. Peterson, who had believed in her when no one else did. It meant starting over again, being the new girl, possibly facing new versions of Amber Foster. "What do you think, Misha?" Carmen asked finally, noticing Sophia's thoughtful expression. "This is your future. You should have a voice in it." Sophia considered carefully before answering. "Would I still see Mrs. Peterson sometimes?" "Of course," Ms. Peterson assured her quickly. "I'd still want to hear all about your writing adventures. And you could visit Westbrook whenever you wanted. And we would still live here? In our apartment?" Carmen nodded. "See, this is our home. The scholarship is just for school." Sophia thought about Mariposa, her story character who had found strength in being different. She thought about the birds in her story who moved freely between worlds, carrying messages and wisdom. Perhaps she could be like them, taking the best of Westbrook with her while exploring new territories. "I think I would like to try," she said finally, "but I'm a little scared." Ms. Peterson smiled gently. "That's perfectly natural, Sophia. New beginnings are always a little frightening. But remember how scared you were to read your story aloud? And look what happened when you found your courage." That evening, after Mrs. Peterson had left and Abuela was preparing dinner, Sophia sat by their apartment window watching birds gather in the trees outside. A blue jay landed on the narrow ledge, cocking its head as if studying her. "Hello," Sophia whispered. "Did my mama send you to check on me?" The bird chirped once, bright and clear, before flying away. Sophia smiled, imagining what message it might carry back to her mother's star, that her daughter was finding her way, finding her voice, creating a story of her own that was still being written, page by page. When the bell rang, Sophia looked up in surprise, as if awakening from a dream. The classroom was beginning to fill with returning students, their voices jarring after the peaceful quiet of the lunch period. "You can leave your notebook in my desk drawer if you'd like," Ms. Peterson offered quietly. "It will be safe there until tomorrow." Sophia considered the offer, her fingers tightening protectively around the green notebook. After a moment, she shook her head, carefully returning it to her backpack instead. Trust, once broken, was not easily rebuilt. Over the next few days, a new routine emerged. Sophia would appear silently at Mrs. Peterson's classroom during lunch, taking her place at the desk by the window. She would eat her modest lunch and then write, filling page after page with Mariposa's story. She still didn't speak, not to teachers, not to classmates, not even to Mrs. Peterson, but on paper, her voice grew stronger and more confident with each passing day. Mariposa's world expanded, becoming more detailed and vivid. The birds in her story each had distinct personalities. The blue jay was gruff but wise, the sparrow timid but observant, the cardinal elegant and somewhat vain. Through them, Mariposa learned secrets about everyone in her neighborhood and school. After school, Sophia would continue writing at home, sometimes losing track of time until Abuela gently reminded her to eat dinner or take a bath. Carmen observed this new obsession with both relief and concern, relief that Sophia was engaging with something again, concern that she still maintained her silence. "Is normal for her to write so much but not speak?" Carmen asked, when she encountered Mrs. Peterson at the grocery store one evening. "Sophia is processing her feelings through her writing," Ms. Peterson explained. "It's actually a healthy way for her to work through what happened. Give her time." A week after receiving the green notebook, Sophia arrived at the public library with Abuela on Saturday morning. Carmen needed to use the computers to check her bank account and print some documents, and Sophia had asked, through a written note, if she could look at books while they were there. "Of course, mija," Carmen had replied, grateful for any request from her silent granddaughter. "Maybe you find books about birds for your story." The Westbrook Public Library was an imposing building in the wealthy part of town, with marble columns and broad steps leading to heavy oak doors. Sophia had visited only once before on a school field trip and had been too intimidated to even check out a book. Now, though, she had a mission. She needed to research birds for her story, their behaviors, their songs, their migration patterns. Mariposa needed to know these details, so Sophia needed to learn them too. As Carmen headed to the computer area, Sophia made her way cautiously toward the children's section. A librarian looked up from the reference desk as she approached. A young woman with purple-streaked hair and kind eyes. "Can I help you find something?" she asked. Sophia froze, her hand instinctively tightening around the strap of her backpack. After a moment, she pulled out her notebook and wrote, Books about birds, please. If the librarian found it strange that Sophia wrote instead of speaking, she didn't show it. We have several excellent books on birds, she said, leading Sophia to a section of nonfiction. Are you interested in local birds specifically or all kinds? Sophia wrote. Local birds that might be outside my window. Ah, a bird watcher, the librarian smiled. I'm Ms. Jimenez, by the way. Let me show you my favorites. Mrs. Jimenez selected several books with beautiful illustrations of North American birds, including a guide specifically about urban bird populations. These have wonderful descriptions of bird songs and behaviors, she explained. And this one even has QR codes you can scan to hear the actual bird calls. Sophia's eyes widened with interest. This was exactly what she needed for Mariposa. You can sit at that table to look through them, Mrs. Jimenez suggested, pointing to a quiet corner. And if you have a library card, you can check them out to take home. Sophia shook her head. She didn't have a library card. Would you like to get one? Ms. Jimenez asked. It's free. You just need a parent or guardian to sign the form. Sophia nodded, then wrote, My grandmother is using the computers. No rush, Ms. Jimenez assured her. I'll be at the desk when you're ready. For the next hour, Sophia immersed herself in the world of birds, taking careful notes in her notebook. She learned that blue jays could mimic the calls of hawks to scare away other birds. She discovered that cardinals mate for life and sing to each other in duets. She read that sparrows were one of the most adaptable bird species, thriving even in harsh urban environments. When Carmen finished at the computers, Sophia led her to the reference desk, where Miss Jimenez helped them complete the application for a library card. Sophia left clutching 3 borrowed books on birds, plus a beginner's guide to creative writing that Mrs. Jimenez had suggested. You come back next Saturday, yes? Carmen asked as they walked to the bus stop. The library is good. Place for you. Sophia nodded, already opening one of the bird books as they waited for the bus. By the end of the second week, Sophia had filled nearly half of the green notebook. Her story had evolved beyond a simple tale of a girl who could talk to birds. Mariposa now used her gift to help people in her neighborhood, finding lost items, delivering secret messages, warning of dangers that only the birds could see from above. In Sophia's imagination, the world became a place where being different was a strength, not a weakness, where a quiet girl from the dumps could be a hero. Mrs. Peterson, who had been discreetly monitoring Sophia's progress, marveled at the sophistication emerging in the young girl's writing. Despite some spelling and grammatical errors, inevitable for a 7-year-old still learning English, the story showed remarkable imagination and emotional depth. The birds in the story served as perfect metaphors for Sophia's own feelings, sometimes trapped, sometimes free, always observing the world from a slight distance. Sophia, Ms. Peterson said gently one lunch period as the girl prepared to leave, would you mind if I read what you've written so far? I could help with some of the spelling before you submit it to the competition. Sophia hesitated, her fear of judgment warring with her growing trust in Mrs. Peterson. Finally, she gave a tiny nod, carefully tearing out a piece of paper from the back of her notebook. On it, she wrote, You can read it, but I need to keep the notebook with me. Of course, Ms. Peterson agreed. Would you be comfortable typing it on the classroom computer? That way, we could easily make corrections without changing your original. Another nod, slightly more confident this time. Wonderful. Shall we start tomorrow at lunch? For the first time in weeks, the ghost of a smile flickered across Sophia's face as she nodded once more. That afternoon, as students filed out after the final bell, Mrs. Peterson noticed Amber Foster lingering by her desk, an unusual occurrence since the girl had been disciplined for destroying Sophia's notebook. Did you need something, Amber? Ms. Peterson asked. Keeping her tone neutral, Amber fidgeted with the strap of her designer backpack. Is Garcia still doing that writing contest thing? She asked, affecting disinterest. Sophia is working on her submission, yes, Ms. Peterson replied carefully. Amber's perfectly glossed lips twisted in a sneer. Even after I showed everyone how bad her spelling is? That's just embarrassing. Ms. Peterson regarded the girl thoughtfully. You know, Amber, the wonderful thing about writing is that spelling and grammar can be corrected. But imagination, heart, courage, those are much harder to acquire. Amber's confident facade faltered slightly. Whatever, it's not like she can win anyway. Why not? Because... Amber struggled, then settled on, because she's from the dumps. Those people don't win things. Those people? Ms. Peterson repeated, her voice sharpening. Amber, I'd like you to stay after school tomorrow. I think we need to have a conversation about respect and assumptions. Amber flushed but knew better than to argue. As she flounced out of the classroom, Ms. Peterson sighed, wondering what experiences had shaped a child to be so casually cruel, to so easily dismiss an entire group of people based on where they lived. Perhaps, she thought, Amber Foster needed to hear Mariposa's story as much as Sophia needed to tell it. The deadline for the writing competition arrived on a crisp Friday morning. Sophia stood outside the school building, clutching a manila envelope containing her story. Inside was a neatly typed manuscript, the product of 2 weeks of lunchtime. Typing sessions with Ms. Peterson, the girl who could talk to birds, had evolved into a 12-page story with a beginning, middle, and end, the longest piece Sophia had ever written. Are you ready, mija? Carmen asked, having taken a rare morning off work to accompany Sophia to school on this important day. You want me to come in with you? Sophia shook her head, tucking the envelope securely into her backpack. She had insisted on carrying the story herself, unwilling to trust anyone else with it after what had happened to her first notebook. Okay, Carmen kissed the top of Sophia's head. I am proud of you, Sophia. Your mama would be proud too. As Sophia climbed the steps to Westbrook Elementary, she heard her mother's voice in her memory. Your words matter, Mariposa. Never let anyone tell you they don't. Her mother had often called her Mariposa, butterfly, saying that Sophia, like a caterpillar, would someday spread beautiful wings. It was why she had named her character Mariposa, a small tribute to the mother who had believed in her voice. The hallways were already busy with students chattering and laughing as they prepared for the day. Sophia kept her head down, navigating the familiar path to room 118. She had remained silent at school since the incident, speaking only to Abuela at home, and only in whispers. Her classmates had mostly stopped trying to engage with her, accepting her silence as another quirk of the weird poor kid. Ms. Peterson looked up from her desk as Sophia entered, her face brightening. Good morning, Sophia. Is that your story for the competition? Sophia nodded, carefully removing the envelope from her backpack. Wonderful. The submission box is in the main office. Would you like me to take it there for you? Sophia hesitated, then shook her head. She needed to do this herself. I understand. Do you know where the office is? Another nod. Sophia had been to the office once before, when registering for school. The box will be on Mrs. Thompson's desk, clearly labeled for the writing competition. All entries need to be in by noon today. Sophia clutched the envelope tighter and turned to leave. Sophia, Ms. Peterson called softly. The girl paused at the door. I'm very proud of you for completing your story regardless of what happens with the competition. That took real courage. A fleeting smile crossed Sophia's face before she disappeared into the hallway. The main office was at the front of the school, past the cafeteria and gymnasium. Sophia timed her journey carefully, waiting until the first bell rang and most students were in their classrooms. She didn't want to risk running into Amber or her friends while carrying her precious cargo. The office was busy with morning administrative tasks. The secretary was on the phone. A parent was filling out a form at the counter, and Principal Williams was speaking with the school counselor in the doorway of his private office. No one noticed the small, silent girl who slipped in and looked around anxiously. On Mrs. Thompson's desk sat a large decorated box with a slot cut in the top labeled district writing competition entries. Several envelopes were already visible inside. Sophia approached cautiously, double-checking that her name was written clearly on the outside of her envelope as Ms. Peterson had instructed. Just as she was about to drop her story into the box, a familiar voice froze her in place. Well, if it isn't Trash Girl with her trash story. Amber stood in the doorway, a hall pass in her hand. Her blue eyes gleamed with malicious delight at catching Sophia alone. "You're not seriously entering that baby story about talking birds, are you?" Amber continued, her voice low enough that the distracted adults didn't notice. God, how embarrassing. Sophia's hand trembled, the envelope suddenly seeming to weigh 1,000 pounds. "Everyone's going to laugh when they hear it," Amber warned. "Just like last time? Is it still full of spelling mistakes? Still about your dead mommy in the sky?" Sophia flinched as if slapped. Her mother. Amber was mocking her mother. Something shifted inside Sophia, a spark of anger igniting where there had been only fear and shame. Slowly, deliberately, she turned to face Amber. Their eyes met, and for the first time, Sophia didn't look away. Amber blinked, momentarily taken aback by this unexpected defiance. "What are you looking at, dump girl?" Sophia said nothing, but her gaze remained steady, her spine straightening almost imperceptibly. Without breaking eye contact, she reached behind her and dropped her envelope into the submission box. The sound of paper hitting the bottom of the box seemed to break the spell. Amber's face hardened again. "Whatever. Enjoy losing." She turned and flounced out of the office, blonde ponytail swinging. Sophia stood for a moment, heart pounding, amazed at what she had just done. She had faced Amber and hadn't crumbled. Her story was submitted. Mariposa's voice, her voice, would be heard. Back in Mrs. Peterson's classroom, the day proceeded with normal lessons. If the teacher noticed a subtle change in Sophia's demeanor, her shoulders slightly less hunched, her eyes occasionally lifting from her desk, she didn't comment on it. After school, Ms. Peterson made her way to the main office. The submission box had been emptied, all entries collected for the first round of judging. As a participating teacher, she wasn't permitted to be part of the selection committee, but she had volunteered to organize the entries for review. "How many submissions did we get?" she asked Mrs. Thompson. 15 total, the secretary replied. Not as many as last year, but still a good showing. Ms. Peterson nodded, beginning to sort the entries by grade level. When she came to Sophia's envelope, she paused, a small smile playing at her lips. Despite all odds, the girl had done it, had completed her story and submitted it independently. Regardless of the outcome, that alone was a triumph. What happened next surprised even Mrs. Peterson. As she was organizing the entries, Principal Williams stopped by her desk. "How are our young authors looking this year?" he asked. "We have some promising submissions," she replied diplomatically. "Any standouts?" Ms. Peterson hesitated. As much as she wanted to advocate for Sophia, she knew her role required neutrality. "All my students worked very hard," she said carefully. Principal Williams nodded, then lowered his voice. Thompson mentioned that the Garcia girl submitted something, the one who stopped speaking after that incident with the foster girl. "Yes, Sophia did submit an entry." "Huh," he looked skeptical. "Can she even write at grade level? Her English language assessment scores were borderline when she transferred in." Ms. Peterson felt a flash of irritation. "Sophia's English is perfectly fine, and her imagination is extraordinary. I'd appreciate if you'd judge her work on its merits, not on preconceptions." Principal Williams raised his eyebrows, unused to such directness from the normally diplomatic teacher. "Of course, Elaine. The judging will be fair, as always." That evening, as the selection committee, comprising 3 teachers from grades not participating in the competition, gathered to review the entries, Ms. Peterson found herself uncharacteristically anxious. Sophia had poured her heart into her story, revealing vulnerabilities and strengths that few at Westbrook had glimpsed. How would the committee respond to a narrative so different from the typical submissions? At home in apartment 3C, Sofia sat at the kitchen table, attempting to focus on her math homework while Abuela prepared dinner. Now that her story was submitted, a strange emptiness had settled over her. For 2 weeks, Mariposa and her birds had consumed Sofia's thoughts and energy. Without them, the silence that had been her protection now felt hollow. "You finish your story today, yes?" Carmen asked, stirring a pot of arroz con pollo. Sofia nodded, absently drawing a tiny bird in the margin of her math worksheet. "Good, very good." Carmen studied her granddaughter's pensive expression. "You know, your mama entered writing contest when she was girl in Puerto Rico. She win second place." Sofia looked up, surprised. Her mother had never mentioned this. "See," she was so proud, "write poem about the ocean." "She was a little bit older than you, maybe 10. Carmen smiled at the memory. She was also a quiet girl, but her words, they were loud on paper. For the first time in weeks, Sofia felt a connection to her mother that wasn't tinged with overwhelming grief, a shared experience, a common passion. Somewhere in the universe, perhaps her mother was watching, understanding exactly how Sofia felt today, nervous, proud, and strangely courageous. Back at Westbrook, the selection committee had reached Sofia's entry. Mrs. Reynolds, a 5th grade teacher known for her high standards, read the title aloud. "The Girl Who Could Talk to Birds" by Sofia Garcia. "Isn't that the girl who doesn't speak anymore?" asked Mr. Barton, the physical education teacher. "After some bullying incident?" "Let's focus on the writing, not the writer," suggested Mrs. Kimura, the art teacher. "Shall I read it aloud?" As Mrs. Kimura began to read, the room grew increasingly quiet. Sofia's simple but evocative language painted Mariposa's world in vivid detail. The birds came alive through dialogue that was by turns funny, wise, and poignant. Mariposa's loneliness, her grief for her mother, and her discovery of her unique gift unfolded with an emotional honesty rarely seen in a 7-year-old's writing. When Mrs. Kimura finished reading, there was a moment of silence. "Well," said Ms. Reynolds finally, "I think we may have found our primary division winner." Monday morning arrived with an announcement over the school intercom. "Attention Westbrook Elementary students and staff. We are pleased to announce the school-level winners of the district writing competition." Sofia sat at her desk, eyes fixed. On her hands, as Principal Williams's voice listed winners from the upper grades. Her heartbeat seemed unnaturally loud in her ears, and in the primary division, grades 1 through 3, our school winner is Sofia Garcia from Mrs. Peterson's 2nd grade class with her story, "The Girl Who Could Talk to Birds." A collective gasp rose from the classroom, followed by bewildered murmurs. All eyes turned to Sofia, who remained frozen in shock. She had never won anything before. "Sofia's story will represent Westbrook in the district competition next month," Principal Williams continued. "Congratulations to all our winners. Teachers, please escort your class winners to the office during 2nd period to receive their certificates." Ms. Peterson beamed at Sofia from the front of the room. "Congratulations, Sofia. We're all so proud of you." Some of the students offered half-hearted congratulations, their surprise evident. Others simply stared. In the back of the room, Amber Foster's face darkened with disbelief and anger. "How did she win?" Amber demanded loudly. "She can't even talk." "Amber," Ms. Peterson warned, "that's enough." "But it's not fair," Amber insisted. "She probably copied it from somewhere. Or maybe her grandmother wrote it for her." Ms. Peterson's expression hardened. "Amber Foster, to the hallway, now." As Ms. Peterson stepped outside to speak with Amber, an uncomfortable silence fell over the classroom. Sofia wished she could disappear. Winning was supposed to feel good, wasn't it? Instead, she felt exposed, vulnerable, as if a spotlight had suddenly been trained on her when all she wanted was shadow. "Did you really write a whole story by yourself?" Tyler Matthews asked, breaking the silence. Sophia gave a small nod, eyes still downcast. About birds? Another student asked. Another nod. Cool, Tyler said with surprising sincerity. My dad says birds are dinosaurs that didn't go extinct. Before anyone could respond to this non sequitur, Miss Peterson returned to the classroom, Amber trailing behind with a sullen expression. Class, I want to be very clear about something, Ms. Peterson said firmly. Every student in this competition submitted original work. Suggesting otherwise is not only hurtful, but against our school's honor code. I expect all of you to congratulate Sophia and the other winners with sincerity and respect. The rest of the morning passed in a blur for Sophia. When second period arrived, Ms. Peterson escorted her to the office to receive her certificate. Cream-colored paper with gold embossing that proclaimed her story the best in the primary division. Principal Williams shook her hand for a photograph that would appear in the school newsletter, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. Miss Garcia, he said afterward, would you come to my office for a moment? Miss Peterson, please join us. In the principal's office, with its intimidating mahogany desk and wall of framed credentials, Sophia perched on the edge of a chair that seemed designed for much larger people. Mrs. Peterson sat beside her, a reassuring presence. Sophia, Principal Williams began, his tone carefully neutral. First, let me congratulate you on your story. The selection committee was very impressed. He paused, straightening a pen on his desk. However, there have been some concerns raised about the authorship of your submission. Ms. Peterson stiffened. What concerns? As you know, our school has a strict policy on original work. All entries must be written entirely by the student, with only minimal guidance from teachers or parents. He looked directly at Sophia. Given the sophistication of the narrative and the unique circumstances of Miss Garcia's home situation, some have questioned whether she received inappropriate levels of assistance. Are you suggesting Sophia cheated? Ms. Peterson asked. Her voice dangerously calm. Principal Williams held up a placating hand. Not at all. I'm simply doing due diligence. As her teacher, can you verify that the work is entirely her own? Absolutely, Miss Peterson stated without hesitation. I watched Sophia write much of it during lunch periods in my classroom. The story is unquestionably hers. I see. The principal tapped his fingers on the desk. And yet, there's quite a discrepancy between her classroom performance and this rather exceptional piece of writing. Perhaps because Sophia has gifts that our standardized assessments don't measure, Ms. Peterson suggested pointedly. Principal Williams sighed. Elaine, you know I respect your judgment, but in this case, I need more than your assurance. The district competition comes with significant publicity, and Westbrook's reputation is at stake. What are you suggesting? Simply a verification process. We'll ask Sophia to write a short continuation of her story under supervision to demonstrate her capabilities. He turned to Sophia. Would that be acceptable, Miss Garcia? Sophia stared at him, heart pounding. They didn't believe her. They thought she had cheated or that Abuela had written her story. The familiar shame washed over her, the shame of being from the dumps, of being different, of not belonging at Westbrook. She hasn't spoken in weeks, Miss Peterson reminded him quietly. Asking her to perform on command seems unnecessarily traumatic. It needn't be traumatic, Principal Williams countered. She can write privately, in the counselor's office. No pressure, just a simple verification. And if she doesn't comply, Ms. Peterson asked, then unfortunately, we would need to disqualify her entry. Ms. Peterson's face flushed with anger. This is outrageous, Edward. You're singling out a vulnerable child because of prejudice, plain and simple. Would you be demanding this verification if Amber Foster had won? This has nothing to do with... It has everything to do with assumptions about children from Sunrise Valley. Sophia wrote a beautiful original story that moved your selection committee to tears. I heard as much from Grace Kimura, and now you're punishing her for exceeding your limited expectations. Principal Williams's expression hardened. That's enough, Elaine. My decision stands. Either Sophia verifies her authorship or her entry is disqualified. He checked his watch. The verification can take place tomorrow morning. That should give her time to prepare. Ms. Peterson stood, signaling the end of the meeting. Come on, Sophia, let's get back to class. In the hallway, Ms. Peterson knelt to Sophia's level. I'm so sorry about this, Sophia. It's unfair and wrong. But I want you to know that I believe in you completely. Whatever you decide to do tomorrow, I'll support you. Sophia's eyes filled with tears that she refused to let fall. She had thought her story mattered, that her voice, even silent, could be heard. Now it seemed that at Westbrook, children like her weren't allowed to excel, weren't allowed to surprise, weren't allowed to rise beyond the labels assigned to them. When she returned home that afternoon, she couldn't bring herself to show Abuela the certificate. She tucked it into her backpack between the pages of her math workbook and said nothing about winning. What was the point when by tomorrow she might be disqualified anyway? That night, sleep eluded her. She stared at the water stains on the ceiling, listening to Abuela's soft snoring from the other side of the room. In her mind, she heard her mother's voice. Your words matter, Mariposa. But at Westbrook, it seemed her words only mattered if they stayed small, expected, contained. Morning came too quickly. Abuela noticed Sophia's unusual quietness as she prepared for school. ¿Estás enferma, mija? She asked, feeling Sophia's forehead for fever. Sophia shook her head. Something happened. At school? A slight nod. Abuela sighed, her weathered hands cupping Sophia's face. You tell me when you're ready, yes? Whatever it is, we face together. At school, Principal Williams was waiting in the office when Sophia arrived. Ah, Miss Garcia, are you ready for your verification exercise? Sophia stood motionless, staring at the floor. Sophia has decided not to participate, Ms. Peterson announced, appearing beside her student, which means, according to your ultimatum, she is disqualified. Principal Williams frowned. I see. That's disappointing. I have something to say. A new voice interjected. All three turned to see Carmen Garcia standing in the office doorway, still wearing her cleaning uniform from her early morning job. About my granddaughter, Mrs. Garcia, Principal Williams said, surprised. We weren't expecting you. Ms. Peterson called me, Carmen explained, moving to stand beside Sophia. She tell me you think my Sophia not write her story, that she cheat. Or I write it for her. Principal Williams had the grace to look uncomfortable. That's not exactly a clean houses since 5 this morning, Carmen continued, her accent thickening with emotion. I clean your neighbor house, Mr. Williams. Mrs. Henderson on Oak Street. I clean their toilet while they eat breakfast. I am not writer, but my daughter, Sophia's mother, she was poet. And Sophia, she is like her mother. She has gift. Sophia stared at her grandmother in amazement. Abuela never spoke this much English, never confronted authority figures. If you want proof, I bring it. Carmen reached into her large purse and pulled out a worn composition notebook, Sophia's original black notebook, the one her mother had given her. Sophia writes stories since she was 5, long before she come to your school. Principal Williams accepted the notebook with obvious reluctance. He opened it to find page after page of a child's handwriting, evolving from crude printing to more refined script over the years. 6 months later, Sophia stood at the entrance of Bridgewater Academy, her new uniform crisp and slightly too large. Room to grow, Abuela had insisted when purchasing it. The imposing brick building with its ivy-covered walls and arched doorways looked like something from one of the storybooks her mother used to read to her. Ready for your first day? Ms. Peterson asked, standing beside Sophia and Carmen. Though no longer her teacher, Ms. Peterson had insisted on being present for this milestone. Sophia nodded, clutching the straps of her new backpack, a gift from Renata Vega, who had become her mentor through the district's writing program over the summer. Inside was a journal embossed with her name, several carefully chosen books, and a small framed photo of her mother. Remember what we practiced, Carmen said, straightening Sophia's collar. If you feel scared or alone, You find a quiet place and write in your journal. Your words will keep you company. The summer had been a whirlwind of preparation for this moment. Sophia had attended Bridgewater's orientation program, meeting her new teachers and a few future classmates. She had participated in Renata's writing workshop at the community college, developing her skills alongside other young authors. And perhaps most significantly, she had helped Mrs. Peterson establish a creative writing club at Westbrook Elementary, which would continue even without her. "You've come so far," Mrs. Peterson said softly. From a girl who couldn't speak to a girl who's changing her school for the better. It was true. The writing club had been Principal Williams's peace offering, his way of acknowledging his misjudgment of Sophia. What had started as a small group meeting during lunch had grown to include students from every grade level, including, surprisingly, Amber Foster, whose spiteful exterior had concealed a talent for crafting suspense stories. The first bell rang, signaling students to enter the building. Sophia took a deep breath, then hugged Abuela and Mrs. Peterson goodbye. "You call if you need anything," Carmen reminded her. "I can be here in 30 minutes on the bus." "I'll be fine, Abuela," Sophia assured her, her voice quiet but steady. The selective mutism that had silenced her for weeks had gradually released its grip, though she remained naturally soft-spoken as Sophia walked through Bridgewater's ornate doors. She felt the familiar flutter of anxiety in her chest. But alongside it was something else, a quiet confidence born from overcoming obstacles that had once seemed insurmountable. She was still the girl from the dumps, still the daughter of a cleaning lady and a poet, still the child who had lost her mother too young. But she was also Sofia Garcia, award-winning author, scholarship student, a girl with a voice that deserved to be heard. Her new classroom was nothing like Mrs. Peterson's cozy, plant-filled space. Bridgewater's fourth grade room featured polished wooden desks arranged in perfect rows, walls lined with maps and classic artwork, and tall windows that filled the space with natural light. Her classmates, already settling into their assigned seats, wore identical uniforms, but carried themselves with the easy confidence of children who had never wondered if they belonged. "You must be Sophia," said a tall girl with auburn braids approaching as Sophia hesitated in the doorway. "I'm Eleanor. Mrs. Williams asked me to be your buddy this week and show you around." Sophia nodded gratefully, following Eleanor to two empty desks near the window. "I read your story in the district journal," Eleanor continued as they sat down, "about the girl who could talk to birds. It was really good. Do you have any others?" "A few," Sophia admitted shyly. "I'm working on one about a girl who finds a door to another world in her apartment building." "That sounds amazing. I like to draw comics, but I'm not very good at writing stories to go with them." Eleanor tilted her head thoughtfully. "Maybe we could collaborate sometime." Before Sophia could respond, their teacher entered and called the class to attention. But as Mrs. Williams began outlining the day's schedule, Sophia felt a warmth spreading through her chest. Perhaps Bridgewater wouldn't be so intimidating after all. Perhaps here, too, she could find connections through words and stories. That afternoon, during the bus ride home, Sophia began a letter to Mrs. Peterson describing her first day, the enormous library with its reading nooks and skylight, the creative writing teacher who had already read The Girl Who Could Talk to Birds and wanted to discuss it with her, the potential new friend who loved comics and stories as much as she did. When the bus stopped at Sunrise Valley Apartments, Sophia was surprised to see several workers on ladders, painting the building's exterior a cheerful yellow. Other crews were repairing the broken security door and replanting the sparse flower beds. "What's happening?" she asked Abuela, who was waiting for her at the bus stop. "New owner," Carmen explained, beaming. "The newspaper story about you. It make people notice our building, how bad conditions were. Health department come, then building. Inspectors, old owner sell to new company. They fix everything, not even raise rent." Sophia stared in amazement. The article about her writing victory had mentioned Sunrise Valley Apartments, the dumps, describing the conditions where the young author lived. She had been embarrassed at the time, but now, they put up sign too, Carmen added, pointing to a new wooden placard near the entrance. No more the dumps. Now we are Sunrise Valley Community. As they walked toward their newly painted building, a small group of children spotted Sophia and ran to meet her. Sophia, can we have writing club today? Asked Miguel, a 7-year-old from the first floor. You promised to help us with our animal stories. During the summer, Sophia had started a small writing group for the children in her building, meeting in the laundry room when it wasn't being used. What began as a way to practice for her Bridgewater entrance interviews had become something meaningful, a chance to share her love of stories with others who, like her, had important things to say but few opportunities to be heard. See, of course, Sophia agreed. Let me change clothes first. Later, as Sophia sat surrounded by eager young writers in the newly cleaned laundry room, she thought about how far she had come from the silent, frightened girl who had hidden in bathroom stalls during lunch. The journey hadn't been easy. There had been puddles and tears, cruel words and broken notebooks. But there had also been Mrs. Peterson's unwavering belief, Abuela's fierce love, and eventually Sophia's own discovery of the power of her voice, both on the page and in the world. Miguel raised his hand excitedly. Sophia, when I grow up, I want to be a writer like you. Do you think I can? Sophia looked at the hopeful faces around her. Children from families like hers, with dreams as vast as the sky, despite circumstances that others might see as limiting. She remembered how her mother had always told her that stories were a way to create new worlds when the real one seemed too harsh or constraining. Yes, she told Miguel with absolute certainty. Your words matter. Your stories deserve to be told. Your voice deserves to be heard. They were the same words Mrs. Peterson had written in her green notebook all those months ago. Words that had carried Sophia through her darkest days and into the light of new possibilities. Words that she now passed on like a torch, illuminating the path for others. Outside the window, a blue jay landed on the ledge, its bright feathers catching the afternoon sunlight. Sophia smiled at it, imagining it might be the same one that had visited her window the day the Bridgewater letter arrived. Perhaps it had been sent by her mother, after all, guiding her toward this moment where past and future, loss and hope, silence and voice, all converged into a story still being written. Tell us about the birds again, asked a small girl with braids, like Sophia used to wear. The ones that helped Mariposa find her voice. Sophia opened her notebook, ready to share the story that had changed everything. Once there was a girl named Mariposa, she began, her voice clear and strong, carrying to every corner of the room, who lived with her grandmother in a small apartment. Mariposa's mother had become a star in the sky, watching over her from heaven. As the children leaned forward, captivated, Sophia felt her mother's presence wrapped around her like a warm embrace. Somewhere she was listening to the daughter who had found her way through words, who had transformed her pain into beauty, who had discovered that sometimes the smallest voices could create the most powerful echoes. 7-year-old Sofia Garcia clutched her tattered notebook to her chest as laughter echoed through the hallways of Westbrook Elementary, the word trash following her like a shadow she couldn't escape. Her threadbare clothes and scuffed shoes, the best her grandmother could provide from their home in the rundown apartment complex the other children called the dumps, made her an easy target for the wealthy students whose parents ran the town. Ms. Peterson watched from her classroom doorway as Sophia walked with her eyes fixed on the floor, her small shoulders curved inward as if trying to disappear. The veteran teacher had seen many struggling students in her 30 years of teaching, but something about this quiet girl with intelligent eyes that seemed too old for her young face had captured her attention from the first day. What no one at Westbrook Elementary realized was that behind Sophia's silence lay a gift so extraordinary it would soon leave them all speechless. Before we continue this heartbreaking journey of a child facing cruel prejudice, please subscribe to our channel for more stories about remarkable individuals who overcome impossible odds through courage and determination.